All right, beep, beep, boop, boop. I think we're live. That's what my screen is telling me that we are live. So fantastic. I'm doing a lot of interviews lately, and I still have my great grandmother's quilt behind me because I'm still in an apartment and I have to soundproof somehow. So as you can see, this quilt is made of, I don't know, dresses and different patches of stuff, and so it's I guess it's nice. It's what I have, and it works. I'm uh, I'm not plugging anything today, but I would like to mention my friends who have a podcast called Light Me at Five. It's real easy to find. Light Me at Five on all the podcast apps, and it's kind of a podcast about the local comedy scene up in South Bend, Indiana. So it's kind of cool. I listen to it because it makes me remember home, and but it's actually entertaining. So give that a listen if you're looking for a new podcast and you want some inside scoop on what it's like to be a struggling comic, and tell them I sent you because I did send you. Tomorrow on my episode tomorrow is with great Indianapolis comedian Gwen Sunkel, who is getting ready to record her first comedy album at the White Rabbit Cabaret November 11th, and it's sold out, so you can't get a ticket. But I'm stoked that she is doing the comedy album. She is a great comedian, great Indianapolis area comedian. If you ever get a chance to see her, please do. But I'm not talking to her tonight. I am talking to my next guest. My guest tonight is an Atlanta based, nationally touring comedian and actor who can be seen all over the country. She was named Best Local Comedian in 2018 by the readers of Creative Loafing Magazine. I need to subscribe to that. You have seen her on Viceland's Flophouse as well as the Fox shows Laughs, Dish Nation, and Punchline. And there's a lot more too. If that's not enough, in order to give back to aspiring female comics, she started an all female comedy class called Laugh Lab at the legendary Punchline Comedy Club. Folks, it's Lace Larrabee. Lace,
Hi, Scott. How are
thank
you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Of course. Hey, first of all, I would like to say I just met Gwen Sunkel
Oh, cool.
at the comedy festival in Bloomington, Indiana.
Uh-huh.
And we just had an absolute blast together. She was one of, I don't want to like pick favorites, but if there were a contest as to who was my favorite comedian that I met and hung out with the whole weekend, I gotta say it was Gwen's uncle.
Yeah,
It
she's
was absolutely incredible. Oh, and that was Limestone, by the way. For those of you who
right.
don't know what festival it is in Bloomington, it is Limestone, and she is based in Indianapolis, like you said. And I had never met her, and I saw her do a set one night, and
Mhm.
I fell in love immediately. And then
Uh-huh.
we clicked, and we hung out the whole weekend. And on the way out the last day, I was like, at one of the coffee shops that, like, sponsored the festival,
Uh-huh.
and who walks in when I'm in my, like, ready to hit the road and go get an airport look is Gwen, and I was like, "This was meant to be." She was
Yeah.
my last goodbye in Bloomington. She was, like, my first love there and then my last goodbye, and I was like, "We
Yeah.
she might be my next spouse." Like, I think
Yeah.
I think when I, probably inevitably when my husband is done with my shit, then I'm gonna have to call up Gwen Sunkel. She's so cool. I freaking love her. I'm so
I
glad
can't
you shouted her out. I'm
Yeah,
jazzed. I'm
yeah, and I
jazzed.
can't wait for the album to come out. I mean,
I
we're not gonna see
know,
it
me
till next
too.
year, but
I know, I
I'm
know.
really stoked for it, and so I do a diversity check on my podcast sometimes,
Mhm.
to make sure I'm, talking to enough women, people of color, all the different orientations, and, between you and her, I've done 3 women in a row, so I think I'm up to 15% women when yours comes out. So I
Okay.
think that's okay. Persons
Scott,
of
that's
color, I
that's
think I'm
not enough.
20%.
It's
Yeah,
not
I know.
enough, but you're doing good. Hey, the fact that you're checking is more than
Yes.
most people are doing.
Yeah.
But we could do better. We could do better.
Yeah,
I teach an all women's comedy class, and I can assure you that there are way more women doing comedy than
all
people
right, well,
think.
send them my way.
I
I
will.
don't I never say no, but some women say no to me. Paula Poundstone, I'll just shout that out. Damn it, Paula, what's wrong with you?
We
But,
gotta get
yeah.
Paula on. Paula's one of my favorites. I listen to Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me every single weekend, and
Yeah.
she is on, I don't know, what, 30% of the time she's one of the panelists.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
come on, Paula. I
Yeah,
say that as if I have any hookup with Paula Powell. I don't.
yeah, I
I
know.
don't. I
I
wish
got
I
turned
did.
down by her publicist, and I got turned
Damn
down by
it.
her, and then my
Damn it.
friends bought me a cameo from her to rub it in, and, they said it was my birthday, like, in March, and my birthday's
Damn
not
it.
till June, so, yeah, it was a
Damn
whole
it,
thing.
Scott. Hey, if you would have told me I would have worn an applique vest
Yeah.
from the early 90s, I would have put on a cool bob wig, and I would
Yeah.
have been Paula. I could have done jokes about cats. I have no cats,
Yeah.
but I could have done the jokes.
Oh, man, I did get to see her up in, Coldwater, Michigan, a couple
Oh,
years
yeah?
ago, and it was a great show. I didn't know she did so much crowd work, but sh it was fantastic.
She is incredible on the spot. That's one of the best things that she does.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna say I've never seen her live, but, like, I've watched so many clips of hers, and like I said, I'm a massive fan of Wait Wait.
Yeah.
So, yeah, she's so good with the guests and with the hosts and everything. She's quippier than anyone else. That's her whole
Yeah.
jam.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and she's my era, so,
Yeah.
it seems like we're a match made in heaven, but, I guess not. So, I'm not gonna talk about it anymore, it's okay.
Hey, the good things are worth waiting for, Scott.
Yeah, yeah. Now, I did wanna mention the first I've only seen you once, and I saw you here in Huntsville. My wife and I moved down to
Yes.
Huntsville, and the first, comedy show that we saw was the one that, Scott Eason puts on there at
Mhm.
Low Mills, and we saw
Yes.
you and laughed. We laughed and laughed and laughed,
Thank
and,
you.
I don't know, I hope you don't take this the wrong way, but I kind of called you a Leanne Morgan for, people who don't mind hearing "fuck."
I If I could pay you for that quip, I'm gonna write that
Okay.
down into my new bio. The
Yeah, there
Leanne
you go.
Morgan for people who don't mind hearing fuck.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
She another idol of mine. I've
Mhm.
worked with her. I did some TV with her back in the day. And Leanne Morgan is it. She's the fact that so many people are just now finding out who she is blows
Mhm.
my mind because I've known who
Yeah.
she is for years. She is so funny, and the fact she is the um what's his name? Who I love. He's one of the Brian Regan. She
Oh,
is
yeah.
like the female Brian Regan.
Yeah. Yeah.
How is she so clean and so funny and so
Right.
Southern?
Yeah.
Like, I am the funny and the Southern, I hope. I mean, I'm the
Uh-huh.
Southern, there's no getting around that, but, like, I hope I'm that funny, but damn it, that's a great fucking reference. That
Alright,
is
alright.
oh, man.
I'm
I'm
glad you took it the right way.
I'm writing that down. No, that's good. That's good. I'll take it. I'll take it.
S so, I did a little bit of looking, and unfortunately, somebody did a really great print interview with you, so I know everything about you now, so everything I ask, I already know. Just this is for everybody else, but let's talk about how you got into comedy and
Yeah.
why you got into comedy.
I mean, I love comedy, always been a fan of comedy. My family's very funny. My parents had me when I was a teenager, or when I was a teenager. That's weird. They had me when I was a teenager, so let's get in the DeLorean and figure out how that happened.
Yeah.
No, they were teenagers when they had me, and man, we were young and poor as a family, and we all were raised together. So and thankfully both of them had a really great sense of humor, and that's how we got through all hard things, right?
Mhm.
We and my parents are still together, and I mean, if it weren't for the sense of humor, I don't think all that would be true. I wouldn't be doing
Mhm.
comedy. I wouldn't have two amazing supportive parents. um but yeah, always been a fan of comedy. Because my parents were young, they let me watch stuff when I was younger. I'm obviously the firstborn,
Mhm.
so I was just I always felt like I was being raised with the adults because they were becoming adults when I was a kid. So
Mhm.
it's like they let me in on adult things and they thought it was okay for me to watch.
Yeah.
And they thought I could take it. And I did. And I loved it. Big fan. I didn't know how to get into comedy, but long story short, after years of performing as an actor and a pageant girl and all that stuff, the things I had access to, in South
Mhm.
Georgia, I was bartending for years, pursuing acting again in my
Mhm.
adulthood. Nothing was really taken off, just a bunch of auditions that went nowhere. And I had a regular at my bar who started running shows. He knew that I loved comedy and knew that I was too busy to get into it. And he booked me on a show he was running and
Mhm.
said, "You've got 2 months or 3 months, whatever it was at the time, to prepare. You've got to do 10 minutes on a show."
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and as any comic knows, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Like, that's 10 minutes might sound like nothing to people who are like, "Oh, I can do comedy. I got
Oh,
hours
yeah.
of material. I've never been on stage, but I got
Right.
hours."
I see that a lot, yeah.
Which is most people who come up to you and are like, "I'm ready to do comedy. I got
Yeah.
hours." And you're like, "Oh, cool. How many shows?" And they're like, "None." I'm like, "That's so you got a tight 30 seconds is what I'm
Yep.
hearing. A tight 30 seconds. Yeah, so thankfully I loved comedy and I was obsessed over it and I had studied it enough and had been on stage enough that like the stage part didn't scare me and the
Mhm.
holding the mic and the
Mhm.
addressing the audience, which is half the battle, that didn't
Mhm.
scare me. So I kind of studied it and I wrote jokes about my life. I got on stage. I gotta say, I did a decent 8.5.
Yeah. Yeah,
And,
that's great.
yeah, that first video of the first time I got on stage got me into the first 2 comedy festivals I ever got into.
Wow.
Yeah, nobody
So
likes to hear that.
you're kind of a natural. You were born for this.
I honestly listen, I used to be ashamed of that, I used to try to hide it, I think even in a few early interviews, I tried to, like, pad it a little bit more.
Uh-huh.
And honestly, at this point, like, in my late 30s, I'm like, "Screw it." I worked my ass off my
Yeah.
whole life,
Yeah.
Like, I earned that moment. The first time I did stand-up was the thing that changed my life
Yeah.
for the
Yeah.
better,
Right.
Saved me from a really bad relationship I had just gotten out of and a horrible
Mhm.
job I was in, and I quit
Mhm.
the job, I got rid of the ex, and, stand-up was, like, the freeing moment of my life, so
Mhm.
I'm really proud of it now. I used to, like,
Yeah.
try to cover it up, and honestly, hell, of course I was good. Of course I
Yeah.
was good the first time. I had a lot of shit to bitch about, so
That's right.
you know what I mean?
And your
Yeah.
style is very I it's very it's obviously conversational and story driven and
Yes.
all that. It's all it doesn't feel you're very good at making your time on stage feel like it's the first time you said it.
Oh,
And
man.
that
Well,
and I
that's
know
a
that's what
huge
really draws
compliment.
yeah, that's what
Thanks.
really draws an audience in because audiences always want to be the first to hear something,
Mhm.
and I just saw that in you. It just felt like it just felt like it was the first time you said it, and I
Thanks.
know that's not the case because I know how many times you have to say it before you get it right.
Yeah, so you know the behind the bits. So
Yeah.
that's not how it works. Now, granted, I would say I don't know which shows you came to on the weekend of the Epic Comedy Hour 10-year anniversary because there were a couple shows that maybe some things I said were the first time I said them.
Yeah.
We did the what was it, Drunk Sober High show, and
Okay.
I chose to be the high one. I was
Uh-huh.
I was originally supposed to be the sober one on the show,
Okay.
and I worked behind the scenes with someone who was picked to be one of the high ones. And I was like, could I just when I saw that the high thing was an option of edible fruity pebbles.
There you
I don't know
go.
how clean we
Yeah.
need to be, but,
You don't.
edible
You don't
fruity
have to be.
pebbles.
Yeah.
Okay, so fruity pebbles full of weed. I was like, "Can I do that?" I was like, "I heard you don't smoke a lot or do a lot." I was like, "Can I would mu I'm out of town. Am I have nothing to do tomorrow. Can I eat the fruity pebbles instead?" And, this
Uh-huh.
other comic let me do that. So that night on stage, I did do stuff I've never said on stage ever
Uh-huh.
before. So I don't think that you're referring to that night.
Yeah.
That was totally different.
Yeah,
Totally
it
different.
was a showcase. Dwight Simmons was on it, and
Yeah, yeah.
Alex was on it. So I think it was
Okay.
Saturday night. Was it Saturday?
Okay.
I think. Yeah.
Friday maybe was the one where it was like the first one, the good one where we weren't all sloshed and
Yeah.
or high. I mean, it was yeah, we were all trying to be professionals. I think that's the one
Uh-huh.
you saw. Yeah.
Right. So I mean, what does it feel like to be up there? I mean, do you remember what you said when you were high? I mean, how much did it kick in before you got up
Yes.
there?
Yes, that's what's funny. Okay, so that's the difference. Like, I'm not a huge drug person or anything.
Hmm.
I spent so much of my life being like a pageant kid, and before
Yeah.
that, I was a cheerleader, and I was like president of the FBLA and on
Uh-huh.
student council, and I was a gifted student. So I was like the super nerdy, like clean, like party pooper for a long
Yeah.
time, and I was just driven and just focused on the future. So I'm not really like that person. I haven't like really experimented with a lot of stuff, and
Hmm.
weed is the only thing. And it's only literally
Yeah.
past 30 was when I started like
Yeah.
trying weed, and I only
Uh-huh.
really like edibles. Like I can't smoke. I cough too hard.
Yeah.
So like I'm super nerdy about it, but my favorite thing for any listeners who like to drink, the difference between getting a little too drunk and getting a little too high, you remember everything when you're high.
Yeah.
That's what's weird. When you can get drunk, black out, you can like move to another country,
Yeah.
commit some crimes, like you can not know what the hell you participated in. When you're high though, it's weird. It's like this weird like state of just like you're suspended
Yeah.
and you're there and you remember it, but it's so silly. And that I honestly wish I would have known more about weed back in the day instead of
Yeah.
alcohol, because I
Mhm.
think that would have been my first vice, really,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's and now it's just an occasional thing, but it's man, it's so much more fun. So yeah, when I was picked for the when I weaseled my way into being the high person on the show, I enjoyed the hell out of it. I remembered everything I said, but I remember laughing harder on stage at the dumbest jokes I've ever written.
Oh, yeah.
I
The
laughed
giggles.
harder.
Yeah,
The
it's the giggles.
giggles,
Yeah,
dude.
yeah.
I got giggle fits like I've never gotten in my life on stage.
Uh,
And I remember that moment like it was better than any moment of like killing with material that is tried and true that I've worked on, that tagged the hell out of, that is
uh-huh.
delivered in the perfect way to the perfect audience. Just giggling my ass off at some half-written jokes in
Yeah,
my notes in my phone. Honestly, I remember every bit of it, and it was fun and so much funnier. So, yeah.
that's great.
Yeah.
I
It was
all
great.
I can say is I've been there. So
Yeah.
and I've been a little bit too much too.
Right?
And yeah,
Yeah. Oh, it was
there's
too much. There's no
yeah,
way I coulda headlined a show with that amount of
yeah.
Fruity Pebbles in my
Uh,
system. Let's be clear. Like, I couldn't headline. And let me tell the other thing about it is I think we were also supposed to do, like, 7 minutes, and I think I was, like, 2 minutes in, and I was like, "Man, I've been up here for way too long. I have ran the light," and they're like, "Bitch,
uh,
you're 2 minutes in. Get it
yeah.
to I was like, "Oh, no. I've gotta do 5 more minutes? This is
Oh, it's all the classic
terrifying."
stuff. You're suspended in
Yes.
animation,
Yes.
time slows
Times.
down. It's great. It's great.
But so I say all that to say, freaking Scott Eason puts on an incredible 10-year
Yeah,
reunion of a show.
yeah.
Let's put it that way. Ah, man,
Oh,
it was the best. It was the
he's a
best.
great guy, and it's funny when I came to Huntsville, I went to an open mic that he runs, and
Yes.
I am not a guy. I'm first of all, I'm not a real chatty guy unless we're talking about something like this, like something that's
Yeah.
important to both of us. I don't like talk about the weather or sports or anything like that. So I went up, I
Yeah.
said, "Hi, Scott. My name's Scott. I'm from South Bend, and I'll be on the list tonight." And then I walked away and talked to another comedian, and then I went up and I think he was expecting me to be like a first timer. And I went up and I decided, okay, I'm not going to work out anything new. I'm going to bring the greatest hits and give you 5 minutes to show you who Scott Curtis is. And
Smart.
when he was
Smart.
done, he was like, oh, so you're a real comic then, huh?
Yeah. Well, when you come up and you have just such a brief intro like that, no everyone expects like, "Oh, this guy's nervous." Like, that's
Yeah,
why. He probably
yeah,
thought like, "Oh, well, you're just saying that to get it out of the way because you gotta get your nerves out of the way."
yeah,
So,
yeah.
smart move. Real slick
Yeah,
of you.
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
So your act, like I said, is very polished and it's seamless. So let's think about your act now versus when you started. I know that that
Mm.
first 10 minutes got you into a lot of stuff and got you really the ball rolling for you, but
Mhm.
how has things changed from when you started to now?
Oh, man. So, the biggest thing that changed was my delivery.
Mhm.
I don't think 2 things. Let's be honest. So delivery for sure is what changed everything because delivery didn't just change me on stage, it also changed how I was writing. So all of
Mhm.
these things are connected, right? So when you very first start, so many people are filled with the fear of like what if the audience doesn't like me, right? So we
Mhm.
tend to accidentally write for the audience instead of writing for ourselves. So many
Mhm.
of us make that mistake. And I think that goes hand in hand with, well, if I'm writing for the audience, I need to deliver like a comedian. And we tell
Mhm.
ourselves that, right? So if you're doing
Mhm.
one thing wrong, you're going to do the other thing wrong. So I think over time and being exposed to so many more audiences in so many different areas and doing different amounts of time on stage, when you go from doing, a type 5 to a 7 to a 10 to a 15 to a 25 to a 30, like you have to gradually get more comfortable with your voice and
Mhm.
more comfortable, and that goes hand in hand with your writing. So you've got to get more
Right.
comfortable with your writing. So the biggest difference is when I first started, gotta be honest, that first set wasn't bad because I wrote from what I knew. I made fun of my
Mhm.
name, my family,
Mhm.
the relationship I had just gotten out of,
Mhm.
and the job I had at the time. Those weren't
Mhm.
hard subjects. I had the material. I knew the rhythm of stand up, so I wrote those, um, and it worked.
Mhm.
What happened though is I got in a rhythm of, well, this thing worked, so I can't switch it up. If I write a new
Mhm.
thing, it's got to fall exactly in line with the other thing I wrote, and it can't change up from there. And then
Mhm.
I was terrified of being on stage without having a full plan every single time from first word to last word.
Uh-huh.
And so I got a little robotic. And I think a lot of comics in their first 2 years get very robotic
Mhm.
because they're scared to mess up the audience. If this works, the audience might not like me if I don't do exactly what I know what works,
Right.
right?
Right. Mhm.
And then a moment happens. So the man I'm married to now, he was doing comedy at the time. He had been doing it for like 13 years, I think, when we met or something like that. He's done comedy for like 20 years and
Mhm.
he's taking a hiatus off right now. So he's not really doing it right now. He did for a long time, lived in LA for a while, was on Comedy Central and a million other things. And, I lucked up and he took me on the road with him very early on when we met and we
Mhm.
started dating. And he's like, "You're really funny." And it wasn't just because I was hot. I mean, I know that was a part of it, but that wasn't all. But he genuinely was like he had taken other women on the road before and guys. He had taken both guys and girls on the road and everything else, and he met me and he was like, "Well, she's funny, but she's also single. I'm single. Let me take her on the road." And then he didn't mind giving me harsh truths early on.
Uh-huh. Mhm.
And one of the biggest things he did for me very early on in comedy was we were in Cincinnati one night. We were working Go Bananas. I had been in comedy for like a year and a half.
Mhm.
And in the green room after my feature set, he said, "You sound like you're trying to sound like a comedian."
Okay.
And then he, like, walked off to go do his hour, and I
Uh-huh.
sat in that green room and just I cried.
Yeah.
That was hard to hear
Yeah.
because I had been doing comedy for, like I said, a year and a half, thought
Mhm.
I had built up from a 5, granted an 8 back to a 5 to a 10 to a this, I'd worked my way up. I had already featured at multiple places, and then to be
Mhm.
told that I still in my mind, I'm a feature at clubs,
Mhm.
and I'm like, "What do you mean I still sound like I'm trying to be a comedian?" And I took it really hard,
Mhm.
and that is what shook me up for me to go, "Okay." why do I sound like I'm trying to be a comedian?
Mhm.
And then I switched it to let me just talk like I talk in person
Mhm.
and just go with what happens, like in a conversation. As long as you have a
Mhm.
game plan as to what you will end on when you need to end, if you plan
Mhm.
ahead,
Mhm.
you can have a good time in between and still be
Mhm.
funny. If you have enough
Right.
tried and true material, you can fucking relax. You don't
Yeah.
have to stress out every
Yeah.
single time. And that was my
Yeah.
biggest problem. That was a very long answer to a very simple question, but stopping writing for the audience, write for yourself, write what makes
Mhm.
you laugh, and then deliver it in the way that still makes you laugh. Deliver it like you would if you were at a party and talking to a group of friends.
Mhm.
That's
You know,
what switched.
that's a really important thing, and I started later, I didn't start until I was 52, and I didn't really realize that fact of do what's funny and don't try to sound like a comedian until just like a year ago.
Yeah. And it
And
hurts, right? When you
oh,
realize it,
yeah.
like, it makes you think
Well,
like, well,
it
you
hurts
thought
when you
you were
watch your yeah, when you watch your film.
and that's what it took too. When he said that, I was pissed. I was like, "What? What are you talking?" I was like, I'm great on stage. What I get laughs every time." And
Uh-huh.
what I didn't realize, I wasn't getting laughs as many times as I could get laughs, and I wasn't getting as genuine of laughs. I was getting, like,
Right.
laughs because, okay, that was written funny.
Mhm.
I wasn't getting laughs because I was making people laugh. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Well, I think what you're saying is you weren't making yourself a sympathetic character, you were pretty much reading the
I was
jokes, almost
making
like they were an
jokes.
essay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
writing jokes. They were about me, but I wasn't as in on it as the audience needed me to be.
Mhm.
And then I
Yeah.
started speaking from a more real perspective and being like, "No, no, no, y'all. I know I'm saying this, and I know I
Mhm.
look like XYZ, but let me tell you blah, blah, blah."
Right,
And then I
right.
started learning how to tag jokes to make them more understandable to an audience based on their perceptions of me. And that's another big thing. You got to start to realize people's perceptions of you. If you don't
Mhm.
understand how strangers take you, you're never going to be a good comedian. You
Yeah.
have to know how everybody else sees you.
Mhm. Mhm.
Cuz if not, you sound ridiculous.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's another switch too. And that's just experience as
Mhm.
well, I think,
Yeah.
you know?
And it's hard to live up to that because, in my case, I'm 6'5", I'm a giant, and people are scared of me when they see me because I look at like an intense guy. And
Yeah.
that's so far from the truth. And then my delivery is a lot like David Letterman. So people say your delivery is like David Letterman. I said, well, I watched him a lot, but this is really me. So
Yeah.
and I can't move away from it. I say golly, I do all the stupid stuff that Midwesterners do and
Yeah.
old and everything else. So it's
Yeah.
just what it is. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I understand that, and it is. I tried because I'm pretty clean.
Mhm.
I could open for Leanne Morgan easily. But
Which,
but
let's be honest, if this gets to her, I can also work clean, and I work clean all the time when I'm
all
paid for it.
right, yeah,
So, let's not say I don't. I
all
just
right,
knew that I didn't
excellent.
have to be in Huntsville. But, Leanne, I'm happy to work with you. I can
Yeah,
be very clean.
she'd be lucky to
Very.
have you.
Oh,
Yeah,
I would love to work with her. Oh, she has the
yeah.
best crowds. She's my mom's favorite comedian, so let's put
Yeah,
it
I
that way.
bet. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, she's just absolutely hilarious, and
She's the
I'll
best.
see the same bit 3 times and laugh 3 times.
Still
So
laugh
yeah,
every
yeah,
single time. Oh,
yeah,
she's a genius. Her
yeah.
delivery is amazing. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
Now, I want to make sure that because you're doing such a great thing, I want to make sure that we talk about Laugh Lab. I know
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
jumping around a little
please.
bit, but it's such a great thing that you're doing because I've been in classes before,
Mhm.
and a lot of times it's 5 white guys and 1 woman,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it just that it is what it is,
yeah.
and whether it's on purpose or not, the woman's comedy sometimes gets stifled unless
Mhm.
she's super confident and ready to go. So let's talk about why you started Laugh Lab and what you do with it.
Sure. Thank you so much. So it's funny. It's 4 years ago. This almost week.
Mhm.
I think a week ago today was the 4-year anniversary of the first time I announced online that I was going to teach the class. It graduated the first week of December 4 years ago. I started it because I was helping 3 different women in Atlanta who all started comedy like over 40.
Mhm.
And they had all decided and they had gone out and tried the open mic scene, and they were like, "This is ridiculous." They
Yeah.
were not getting anywhere in it. They hated it. They hated the process of going through, like, the waiting until midnight or later on a Wednesday to get stage time for 4 minutes at a time, and they're like, "There's gotta be more to this." All of them had different goals. One of
Mhm.
them had a goal of like doing one woman show. One had a goal of being a motivational speaker instead. One had a goal of specifically working in the realm that she was Jewish and she's a mother and she's all these things. And she's like, I want to specifically work for the people who were looking for exactly me. And I was like,
Mhm.
yeah, private gigs. That's a whole world, girl. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's good. Good goal. Like, let's do it. And so they all wanted to perfect their material. One recommended me to the other, one recommended me to the other. And then once that got around, I was working with all of them privately and people were started hitting me up. And I was like,
Mhm.
okay, I cannot continue to do this. I'm pursuing my own career. What if I just taught a class? So I hit up the Punchline, the Atlanta Punchline,
Mhm.
who's one of my home clubs. The Laughing Skull and the Punchline, I would always say both are my home clubs. Love
Mhm.
them equally. And the Punchline's like family to me. And I was like, if I want to teach a class, what's the deal? Could I do it here? We worked out a great deal. And then I advertised a class. I was like, let me get this out of the way. Let me help whoever wants to do this.
Mhm.
So I put it out there. I said all women's class, and I said all women specifically because every woman I had talked to discussed all of their hurdles being out there in the open mic world.
Mhm.
So many of them had to do with getting railroaded, you know, by guys at shows. They would interrupt them, they would ignore them, they tried to introduce themselves, and it just wouldn't get them anywhere. Worst case scenario, they were, sexually assaulted one way or
Mhm.
the other, whether verbally or immediately after some dude would send them a dick pic or whatever. And it just
Yeah.
happened over and over and over. And or guys would ask them to open for them, but they were really just trying to hook up. And I just heard this story so many times from so many people that I can't even count it. People are like, well,
Mhm.
tell me exactly. It's everybody. It's almost every woman I know who started comedy who had either a negative, like, you don't matter, you're not funny, women aren't funny, you're just
Mhm.
Amy Schumer reaction,
Mhm. Mhm.
or because like they can't just see that every woman has a different story to tell and they just go, oh, you said the word vagina, you're just Amy Schumer, there's no way
Yeah.
you could have a different take on your most important body part. How could that possibly be the case?
Yeah.
And then, and if you talked about being married, they're like, oh, you're just every other female comic. And I'm like, every dude I know has a joke about dating or being married or their penis
Mhm.
or whatever.
Yeah.
But, so many women were railroaded and ignored and then or hit on, and then they all quit. So I
Mhm.
was like, let me teach a class. I opened up a class, it sold out immediately. I was like, what am I doing? What did I sign up for? I taught them, they were great. Then I had a wait list.
Mhm.
And then the next class, I taught a whole class. And before I finished that one, there was a wait list. And there were 6-week long classes. And there was a wait list. I am right now teaching my 27th class in
Wow.
4 years. And during the pandemic, I had to switch it up. And now I do a co ed class as well. So they're not all women anymore. I've done 3 co ed classes now.
Mhm.
But I still offset those I still do the all women class. Like,
Mhm.
that's what so many women sign up for because so many of them either had a horrible experience in the open mic world or
Mhm.
they took a class that was exactly like you described. There was
Yeah.
one woman in the class or two, and it was taught by
Mhm.
a dude. And no offense to the dudes, but they were just like, could you not talk about your period? And they're like, well, I don't know. That's a third of my life. So
Yeah.
how do I not so is everyone not allowed to talk about food? Like, what
Yeah.
are you not allowed to talk about?
Yeah.
Like, that's my experience, and you just don't think it's funny because you don't experience it, but you forget that 50% of the audience and the major ticket buyers are all women.
Yeah. Yeah.
People forget that. And
Yeah.
so I have just like pumped out all these women. And now the majority of shows ran in Atlanta and the Atlanta area are Atlanta surrounding area are all shows ran by women that took my class.
Wow, that's great.
So I accidentally took over by doing that. So now I have a cult. And I
Yeah.
love it
Hey,
because
we all need a cult.
listen, and I'm gonna be honest, there's not enough female cult leaders out there,
Uh-huh.
so I'm proud to take that position.
Yeah, and you're doing it
Yeah.
in the right way. Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
I appreciate that.
Thank
Let me
you.
ask you something about your tact because I'm an older gentleman, you're an adult, and a lot of people who start comedy, it seems like they're either 22 or 42. And
That's so true.
it's a big
S
chunk. It's probably
Yes.
2/3 of the people that start comedy. How do you approach a 22-year-old versus a 42-year-old as far as coaching them?
Okay, so that's a great question because in my classes, uh, level 2 is the only class that you have to apply for, and the
Mhm,
only prerequisite is to have finished one of my level 1 classes. So my level 1
mhm.
classes, there is no limit to who takes it, right?
Okay. Mhm,
You have to click the button that says I identify as female, blah blah blah, like, and that's about
mhm,
it. Other than that, I've had every single class. I have a range from 21 because
mhm.
I don't think I've had a 20 I don't think I've had a 20-year-old. I might have put in there that I only take 21 and up because the club serves alcohol, so I don't want to be in that
Yeah.
weird position. So I'm
Mhm,
pretty sure everyone I've had is 21, and then I've had all the way up to 80.
mhm.
And every class I have women of every single decade, like
Yeah.
20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s,
Mhm.
almost every single time. It's rare, it's more rare that I have the women in their 70s, but I've had at least 5 women in their 70s take my class, and
Wow.
then lots of women in their 60s, tons of women in their 50s and 40s and 30s and 20s.
Mhm.
So it's not a bad observation. I think what you're seeing is people who actually hit the scene and do it, which are going to generally be people in their 20s who have the free time to do it, right?
Yeah.
And then
Mhm.
usually women in their 40s who've hit their part of their lives where they're like, fuck it, I don't care what anybody thinks of me anymore.
Yeah.
They're probably either divorced or they just got out of a bad relationship or,
Mhm.
whatever. And they're like, I'm going to attempt it. So I totally see why those are the most represented women in, starting in comedy and other scenes. But in my class, it's everybody. And I approach it the exact same way. I start in the exact same manner. I go, we've all had life experiences. So when I encourage them to write, when they sign up for the class, I go, start writing. Don't try to
Mhm.
write jokes. Just write your experiences and your observations. That's it.
Mhm.
Just start there. And then in class, what I promise to everyone is in 6 weeks, I will teach you what it took me a year to learn in stand up.
Mhm.
And so it's like a fast forwarded version of a very harsh open mic every week until
Mhm.
we get the finished product.
Mhm.
And so I don't really approach it any different way. If people come in and they go, I want to do a whole clean set, I'm
Mhm.
all on board with that. And I guide them that way. That's pretty much the only difference that I make is like when I'm guiding material is if someone says they want to be clean or not.
Mhm.
Other than that, a 21-year-old's perspective is just as valid as a 71-year-old's perspective because that's their life experience.
Mhm.
The biggest thing that separates is I just encourage no punching down. I encourage
Yeah.
punching up.
Mhm.
And so I eliminate any punching down, which is funny because a 71-year-old, there's not much punching down they're going to do. They've lived 71 years, like
Yeah.
their experience is totally valid. If they wanna shit on a 21-year-old, they're more than welcome to, but if the
Yeah.
21-year-old wants to shit on the 71-year-old, I'm like, "Good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck with that. Good luck getting sympathy from the audience or from your classmates. Good
Yeah.
luck," you know?
Yeah, all you get is
So,
"Okay, boomer," that's all you get, yeah.
you can say, "Okay, boomer," and that's about it. Other than that, you're
Yeah.
kinda on your own. You're on your own, girl. And,
Uh-huh.
but yeah, I do not because I feel like it's the same thing. You're gonna take I'm there to help make their observations and experiences concise, tight, and be in the right order, which is the
Mhm.
funniest thing is the last thing they say, and make sure they
Right.
have a very clear setup. Other
Mhm.
and make sure their act outs and everything else are as big as they can be. if
Right.
they're necessary in that joke. Other than that, I don't approach it any differently because I'm like,
Mhm.
if you're on stage holding the mic, you're here for a reason. Something
Mhm.
got you here. Now, do I do I generally think that the women like 50 and over are funnier? 100%. Because they are,
Mhm.
because they have more shit to talk about
Yeah.
and they've experienced more
Yeah,
and they're
I think older
freer.
people are just more comfortable in their skin, and they
Yeah.
it nothing they I mean, when you've seen as much as you've seen, going
Yes.
up on stage isn't as big of a deal.
Exactly, and it's not as big of a deal to them, and that and if you are over 50 and you've signed up for a stand-up comedy class, you've been through some shit, and I'm ready to hear it, and I bet you
Yeah.
it's funnier than any and I'm just there to help guide it, to make sure it's tight and stage ready,
Uh-huh.
and I am not there to change it in any way unless it's the occasional, like, unwoke is not the correct term to use, but if it's a little and I'm like, "Have you been around people in a while?" Like, because
Yeah.
you're not allowed to say that anymore. You gotta we gotta tone that back a little bit. Let's not talk about your taxi driver that one time you were in Amsterdam. Like, that's not a thing. We can't call
Yeah.
him that. You know what I mean? Like, we gotta,
Uh,
like so I that every now and then I gotta tone down some, like, we haven't been in public in a while,
yeah.
kind of stuff. But other than that, I've got to say my favorites are people have lived a life and have something to talk about. So yeah,
Yeah. I just bet that that's such an appreciated part of the Atlanta scene because just and I hate saying the word safe space, but creating a space where you can be
hmm
creative and not worry about somebody hitting on you,
hmm
the somebody thinking your jokes are stupid because they're
hmm
geared towards a more woman's point of view and things like
hmm
that. I can really appreciate that because I've seen it, and Gwen and
yeah.
I actually talked about it a little bit. And I had so many women on the show, and I don't feel like I'm sitting in the proper seat to talk about how bad comedy can be for women and how many bad experiences you can have. So I
But
never asked it, but Gwen had talked about it before, and I said, "Can I please talk about this?" And since she
yes,
said it
I
was
was just
okay,
about to
we
say
did.
you're
Yeah,
no, you're in the perfect seat to do it. What are you talking about? You're a
yeah,
middle-aged white dude. That's the
yeah.
best seat to be in. That's all we want is someone else to just tiny bit. Women are bombarded with empathy. Like
Yeah.
that's what we have to fight and carry all day, every effing day is just
Mhm.
trying to think about everyone around, whether we want to or not. It's just in our freaking blood. It's annoying, honestly.
Yeah.
And it would be great to have someone outside of us and our friends sit around and go, wait a second, what are y'all experiencing? What do you think?
Uh-huh.
What does it feel like for you? Why is it shitty for women in comedy? Like, that's all we want is someone to just
Uh-huh.
go, hey, let's listen. Instead of saying, hey, you know how you could fix it? Maybe you could all come back to open mics again. Maybe don't drop out of comedy. Because that's what I used to hear constantly for the first 6 years I was in stand up. Every scene I
Mhm.
went to all over the country, I go, that's weird. It feels like there's no women here in this scene. And they'd go, yeah, they all quit. And then I'm like
Yeah.
looking around, I'm like, why do they all quit? Why don't you ask us? Why
Yeah.
don't y'all
Yeah,
start
no
with
doubt.
asking the question, what's
Yeah.
wrong? Why are they not coming back? Is it because they're not funny or because this
Mhm.
is a hostile environment? Like,
Yeah.
what is it? It's
Yeah.
probably the latter. I'm going to be
Mhm.
honest. It's going to be the latter. So
Yeah, yeah.
it's great to ask the question. Of course, you're in the perfect position to ask the question.
Yeah.
That's all we want is someone else to just be a tiny bit empathetic and just go, "What's the deal? What's the problem?"
Mhm. Mhm.
So please don't
And
hold back from asking that.
yeah, and I after talking to Gwen and now you, I feel like I feel more comfortable with it. And you know
Good.
what? I'm an old married man. I've been with the same woman for 38 years and I have a daughter, and I don't think that I I I don't think any of that shit's appropriate, and I don't know why men think
Good.
they can do it. So
Good.
that's my
Good.
thing, and I raise my
I
kids not to be like that, and,
I love that.
so yeah, but, it bothers me because I know a lot of young women comics that have been through that stuff. And,
Yeah.
I just want to be the dad. I just want to be the dad or the grandpa and just beat people up, but I can't do that. So, but I wanted to ask you,
But you can.
I
Scott, you
can, yeah,
can. You
yeah,
can be
if I
at
can
the
get away with
shows,
it.
and if you can see things going down, you can go, "What's going on here?"
Yeah, yeah,
Now, you need to apologize to her,
yeah,
and you need to say, "Da, da, da, that's not appropriate here. Don't talk like that to people," and you should
yeah,
do that. Why
yeah,
not?
yeah,
I'm that
yeah,
person at shows. I'm not even
yeah,
a mom yet, but
yeah,
I'm that person. I've been acting like a mom of the scene for years.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I think that's another reason I started the class, because like I don't have any kids and I want to pass something down. And I'm like, let me like, what can I give back? Like I want to make more of me. So
uh-huh.
I don't know, there's nothing wrong. Be the dad. Be the
Yeah.
dad, Scott.
Yeah.
Do it.
I am. I just don't
Do it.
I have to be careful because I'm a large man and people are already afraid of me,
That's
so
right. That's right. That's
yeah.
right. That's right.
Um,
Yeah.
what did you learn about yourself teaching that class?
Wow. Um, I learned that I am funnier on the spot than I thought I was.
Mm,
So when women are just running their material and I go to tag their stuff, things are coming to me left and right because, as
mhm.
an artist, it is when we sit down to write just for ourselves, it is the most painful thing you can possibly do.
Yeah. Mhm.
Right? You're like, oh my God, the last thing I want to do is think about myself and my experiences and sit here or listen to your tapes or listen to your recordings and then tag them and talk about that's the last thing I want to do. And I'm like,
Mhm.
maybe I don't want to write new stuff because I don't have it in me. Maybe I'm not creative enough. You beat
Mhm.
yourself up for those things. And then what I realize is when it's not about me and it's someone else and I'm not attached to it, like there's some TV shows that I've done that I got to write on topics and headlines and stuff like that. And that was 1,000 times easier than
Mhm.
sitting down and writing for myself. If it's
Right.
not about me, I am like, I
Yeah.
can't stop.
Uh-huh.
And I'm giving people tags that are like, "That's not even my style," and I'm like, "I don't care. I'm just you've now inspired me because you're making me write because I like what I see where you're going and I wanna help you go there, and my
Mhm.
brain works faster when it's not about me."
Yeah. Yeah.
So that
I
was the
feel the same.
most
Yeah.
yeah, and that was the most helpful slash, frustrating thing that I learned was,
Uh-huh.
like, why have I not in this past decade done that for myself? Like, the time, you know but people are paying me for their time, and I'm there, and I'm teaching them, and I feel even more inspired to help when I'm being paid for my time, but it's
Mhm.
like, why won't I do that for myself when I have free
Mhm.
time? Why am I so
R
frustrated and stressed out, with my own writing, um, when I can write so easily for other people? And I'm not writing their
Mhm.
jokes. I'm just tagging and or suggesting. I'm just like, I see people with an idea when they have rough ideas, and I'm just like, oh, you know what you should do with that? You could go this way, you go that way. And then I inspire them. And then I'm like, why am I not doing that for me?
Right. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
been it's been a beautiful slash, like I said, frustrating thing.
Uh-huh. It is painful. It's
Yeah.
so painful to look at it's painful to look at your last bit, and it's painful to
Mhm.
look at your last year, and it's hard.
It's
But
always hard. Yeah, yeah, and to know that I could do it for other people when it's not about me, I'm like, "What's oh,
yeah.
shit. What am I ignoring with me? Oh,
Yeah.
no. This is something I gotta work out. Oh, I don't oh, man." Yeah, that's frustrating. That's
So I
frustrating.
wanted to ask you, you've had a lot of in recent years, you've had a lot of good experience acting, and
Mhm.
that seems to be rolling for you a little bit. What happens if you become like a big star and all of a sudden you're getting put in movies and stuff like that, and it takes away from your comedy career? Would you, if you had the opportunity, would you walk away from comedy, or would you still make time for it?
No, no, no. The goal is always for one to feed the other. Like that's
Mhm.
it. And that's what I've experienced so far. And I'm glad that from the outside it seems that things are going really well because it's because I started acting when I was 9.
Uh-huh.
Obviously things didn't like take off. I ended up having to like do pageants for a long time, and then I had to go to college, and then I did this and I did that, and I bartended for 12 years, and I did so much in between, and then nothing was happening, and once I did comedy and then got good at comedy, then acting started taking off, and then
Mhm.
once I started getting better acting gigs, then I would get better comedy gigs, and then it's
Ah.
vice versa. So it's
Uh-huh.
like the comedy world takes you more seriously the more credits you get. Well, the acting world takes you more seriously the better you are at auditions, and I was better at auditions because I was getting better on stage. Because the more
Mhm.
comfortable you are with yourself, right? That we learn in stand up, the more comfortable I am on camera.
Mhm.
So it all just feeds itself. But here's what's funny is the acting gigs that I get are directly related to me as a comedian. Like they're all the best stuff that I've gotten have been reporter and host roles, which
Yeah.
is just me.
Uh-huh.
I'm not a character when I'm doing that. I'm just me. So
Yeah.
I audition 5 times a week, if not more, through my agency.
Mhm.
So I'm auditioning constantly, but everything I get booked on are all host and reporter roles, which is just me talking into a
Uh-huh.
mic.
Right.
And then what do I do best but talking to a mic?
Yeah.
So, it's kinda like they
They
feed
didn't even
each
have to tell you
other.
how to hold it. Yeah.
Exactly! Like, I'm like, "Dude, I got 90% of this. You just tell me the words. I got the
Yeah.
rest. I'm so good at this." So, it's funny, like, I used to be like, "Oh, I'm gonna be this actor one day." And then the
Uh-huh.
more I got into it, I was like, "I think I'm just good at being me." I don't know
Yeah.
how great I am at being a character as much as I am just comfortable in my own skin, and
Mhm.
now, finally, for the first time. And that's what fuels the other. So, yeah, of course, I would love like a bridesmaids type trajectory where I get some fun,
Yeah.
silly role. Because my dream would be to be like the Melissa McCarthy character, in a
Uh-huh.
film. Like, I want to be the goofy, odd person and be that part of me that I always feel like I am and
Mhm.
play that role, and then that get me other roles like that. Yeah, that's the dream, and then I would never stop doing stand up. Like Joan Rivers is my idol. Like
Mhm.
that's I want to work and I want to have dates on the calendar until I die. Like I want to
Yeah.
have dates I can't make it to because I'm 85 and I died. That's what my goal is. So I think it all should feed each other, and
Uh,
I think stand up is the one thing that's always me, so I would always wanna fall back on just telling my truth and just being me. Um, but yeah, I'm gonna be in Ozark.
oh, are you
I
really?
Yeah, I'm
Excellent.
I filmed it earlier this year, but it was a reporter role.
Uh-huh.
But it's the biggest thing that I have coming up, so I had, like, 5 lines. If they keep them all, who knows?
Yeah.
I was cut out of a Steve Carell movie that I was in, but I still
Uh-huh.
get residuals for it, so
Yeah.
but I played a reporter in it, but I still get residuals for it, so, I it still worked for
Yeah.
me, but,
Yeah.
I got to work with Jon Stewart and Steve Carell and all those guys,
Mhm.
and it was amazing, but I don't have any footage of it. And then, yeah, I've done all the math, and I don't think they can cut me out of the scene that I'm in.
Yeah. Okay.
Playing a reporter in Ozark. So I'm in
Yeah.
episode, 7 of season 4
Okay.
of Ozark. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm an Ozark fan, so I'll definitely
So
see it.
am I. It's the biggest thing that I like outside of that Steve Carell movie that I did. This was the first time I had been booked in something that I watched.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it was huge. I
Yeah.
enjoyed the hell out of it, and, let's hope they don't cut me out. So season 4, episode
Excellent.
7, I should be in Ozark.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fantastic. I've
Yeah.
got a quick question that I ask just about everybody. What do you know now, being a stand-up comic, that you wish you would have known when you started?
Mm, I covered a little of it, which was to make sure that you're just talking from your own perspective and you're not trying to be somebody else. I think
Mhm.
all of us should be wary of whether we're emulating someone or we're just trying to be somebody that we think the audience likes. But
Mhm.
like I said, that comes with time. There's nothing you can force about that. I think the other thing I wish that I would have known then when I first started than I know now is just throw it all against the wall. Like throw everything out there, do all of
Mhm.
it, start a YouTube channel and whatever would have been out when I first started comedy, like
Mhm.
Vine and all that stuff. Like what
Yeah.
I wish I would have not held back. I wish I would have
Uh-huh.
had a blog and a podcast and a this and a that and all that, and that I would have consistently done multiple things from the beginning to see what stuck instead of
Mhm.
waiting until I was inspired to do a thing.
Mhm. Mhm.
I waited so long to think like, but I think that's just my mentality, maybe my generation where we're like, we wait until we're really good at something or we're really
Mhm.
inspired at something before we do something instead of like this Gen Z where they just do it whether they're good at it or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wish I would have had that mentality
Yeah.
of just
Yeah.
doing something because eventually you're going to be good at it if you
Yeah.
do it enough. You know what I mean?
And that
And
makes
if
sense because the bad
yeah,
stuff that you do, people forget anyway. So
they
it's
forget
not,
it all. It
yeah,
doesn't
like in a
matter. Like, if
second.
you
Yeah.
suck at it, who gives a shit? Once you
Yeah.
get better at it, that's what they'll remember, and the
Yeah.
hardcore true fans will be like, "We've been with you from the beginning."
Yeah.
And that's what I'm sad that I don't have is, like, outside of my stand-up fans, like, I don't have that in any other genre. I waited for so long to start a podcast. I waited for so long to do everything, and
Mhm.
I wish I would have listened to I'm gonna he's gonna hate this, but my husband, he was right.
Yeah.
He told me he's always right.
Yeah.
Ugh. He's like, "You should be doing this. Why aren't you doing that? Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you don't you have a YouTube channel about blah blah blah?" And I'm like, "I don't know yet what I want
Yeah.
my YouTube channel to be called, so I can't start it." And if I would have had a 9-year YouTube channel, I'd have 4 shows on Netflix right now.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
Like, what
Yep.
the hell? Why did I wait so long for everything?
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird because it's a lot of work for one thing, and second, you get so many false starts because I've tried some things, and
Sure.
you get so many false starts, and then you start doubting yourself, and then you just walk away from it,
Yep.
and that's kind of where I'm at, everything except for this. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's and it doesn't matter to me. I'm not trying to be famous or anything, but I was enjoying myself, the stuff that I did. So just do it because you enjoy it,
Do
whether
it because you enjoy
it's a
it,
creative
whether
outlet. Yeah.
it's perfect or not. That is the
Mm,
number one thing that I would
yeah.
pass on to anyone is just do it because you enjoy it. As
Right.
long as you're not hurting anybody, do it and do it consistently. You'll get
Hmm.
better at it. Why
Yeah.
wait?
Yeah.
You know?
No doubt. That's good advice. So, Lace, where can people find you if they want to see where you're going to be and what you're working on?
That's a great question. I need to update my website. I've been so bad since the pandemic happened. I just kind of deleted the whole part of my website that says where I'm going to be. So now I just kind of post everything on Instagram. And I feel like that's where most people go anyway. But please,
Uh-huh.
Instagram at Lace Larrabee, Twitter at Lace Larrabee. Um, my podcast, the biggest thing people could do to help me out or support me would be to follow Cheaties, and that's Cheaties like Wheaties but with a C. My podcast co-host and I are both comedians. We both got cheated on and caught the guys in the same way. And
All
so we
right.
commiserated over that and we started a
Uh-huh.
podcast and we just released episode 152 today and we started it over the pandemic. We work really hard at it. We make no money at it. It
Uh-huh.
is on iTunes. It's on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcast, all those places, and some subscribers and reviews and merch purchases are the best thing that could help us out. So
All
if people
right.
could just follow Cheaty's podcast, that would be incredible. Yeah.
Excellent. And I have to ask, do you have a Frenchie over your shoulder there?
She is a look at her. I don't know if you can see her eyes. Her eyes look ridiculous right now. She
Uh-huh.
is a little schnauzer mix.
Oh, is
She's
it?
like a
Okay. It looks
schnauzer
kind of
poodle.
Frenchy from here. Yeah.
No, Cammy, come here. She's half deaf. She's 13 and a half, so she can't hear
Oh,
anything.
okay.
Come here. Come here. Come here. Oh, I might get her to come over here. Come here, baby. Come say hi. Oh, come say hello to the people. Okay. So this is
Oh,
my
there we
little
go. Hi,
beast.
sweetie.
There's my little beast. Yeah. So her name's Cammy. She needs a haircut. I give her haircuts now because she started having seizures a year ago. Uh,
Oh, yeah.
so she's on seizure meds and she does great with them. She's doing much better now than she was a little over a year ago. And so, yeah, I like to give her own haircuts and stuff now. So she's not as pretty as she could be,
Yeah.
but she's
Hi,
perfect.
sweetie.
She's a good girl. She's a good
Yeah.
girl.
She's a
Yeah.
good girl.
Yeah. She's like, she just ate a full bowl of food and she's looking at me like, I would like more food.
Yeah.
So you can give me more. And she's like, is that why you picked me up? Was this a discussion? Is that somebody who's
Yeah.
going to tell you to give me more food? Because that's the only thing she's interested in is
That's
more
the only
food.
podcast she wants to listen to is the More
Yeah. She's
Food
like,
podcast.
is this
Yeah.
a podcast about giving tiny dogs more food? Because
Yeah.
that's she'll subscribe to that.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, Lace, thank you so much for being on the show, and I
Thanks.
I I I really admire what you're doing there in the Atlanta scene for the other comedians,
Thank you.
and making that space where they can be creative without feeling threatened, and that's fantastic, and I'm
Thanks,
glad you're
Scott.
doing that, and you're funny. I'll tell you that.
Oh, I
As a
appreciate it.
comedian, I always tell people that I'm always like analyzing when I watch comedians. I'm always getting too much in my head watching, trying to
We
extract
all do.
knowledge. Yeah, but
Yeah.
yours, I was actually able to relax and just enjoy the show. So that,
Oh, my
yeah,
heart. Oh, that
yeah,
makes me
that's
feel so
great.
good. Thanks,
Yeah.
buddy. I appreciate it. I hope that's my experience. That I hope that's why. I
Yeah.
like that. Also, I just want to say, I know you complimented me about like, helping other comics and putting it out there. So I have two things I want to say. I have had everything from one of the people, the very first class that I ever taught, she is now a writer for Jimmy Kimmel.
Wow.
Yeah, not because of me, granted. I just helped her with stand up. She was already a writer and all these things beforehand.
Mhm.
And she really like attacked Twitter really hard, like
Uh-huh.
over the pandemic. And she got really famous on Twitter, went viral like crazy, got like 300,000 extra followers. Like, I mean, it went nuts. And then Jimmy Kimmel hired her, and now she's a writer. Now she lives in LA. She's doing that, right?
Wow.
So I have everything from that to as of yesterday, I was on Twitter last night and I'm scrolling and I see a video of the latest psycho on a plane who's acting crazy, who gets taken off the plane by the air marshal. And it
Uh-huh.
was another student of mine. So when you thank me for putting out comedy and helping out people, yeah, sure, I do good things like, help people who end up being super successful on Jimmy Kimmel. And then
Wow.
also, up until yesterday, the latest video of a lady who she brought her own sound system, which I got to give her. I did tell people to be prepared. So
Yeah.
she brought her own sound system with a mic on her face and a speaker on her hip, and she set it all up. And it was 20 minutes before the plane landed. There's videos all over the internet now of it, and she starts screaming about the pandemic started because of something something on the internet. I don't know what she's saying,
Oh,
but she's like
no.
getting attacked by both sides by like and I recognized her immediately. I was like, I know her. That's somebody who took my class. Holy shit. And then I looked through my phone
Wow.
and she texted me like in November last year and was like, "Hey, I'm going crazy. I'm dying to get back on stage. I
Uh,
want to come back up to Atlanta," because she lives part-time in Puerto Rico and then part-time in Atlanta. And she's like, "And I'm
mhm.
dying to get back on stage. I'd love to take your class again. And where can I get on stage?" I was like, "Girl, there's probably not going to be anything till like 2022. So
Uh-huh.
I don't know if I can help you." And yeah, she figured out a way to take herself to stardom. So I've got two famous people who
Oh, yeah?
came from my class. So they run the
That's
gamut.
yeah.
Listen, so I approach
That's a
everyone
great
the same
story.
way. Yeah, I approach
Yeah.
everyone the same way. The way they take it is I have nothing to do with that. So
Well,
who knows?
thanks again for being on the show. I really
Thanks.
appreciate it. I learned some stuff, and I think everybody
Cool.
that listens are gonna learn stuff.
Thank you. And thanks for having me and thanks for being cool with me changing times too. Sorry,
Oh,
dude.
yeah,
I've
no
been like
problem.
I've had so much going on. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
been a wild
I
ride.
know what it's like. I've had to reschedule some stuff for my stuff too, so I
Yeah.
get it. All
Okay.
right, well,
Thanks,
thank you.